working. I'm back. I know you've missed me. I've been away for ages because I've been so busy, but today it's my son's birthday, his first birthday, and so I'm going to make a birthday cake from scratch and I'm going to decorate it. I've made birthday cakes before, but not this ambitious, and this time I'm going to show you how it goes. It might go wrong, it might be a disaster, or it might be beautiful, and you're going to get to see the whole process. So I'm using recipes that I found online. If you want to know what recipes they are, I'm going to link them in the description below. So yeah, if you want to see how this pans out, keep watching, and don't forget to comment any questions that you have or what you think about my cake when I make it. So first of all, I went ahead and lined the bottom of my tin with some greaseproof paper by measuring the bottom and cutting out the circles, and then laying those circles onto the bottom of the pan after I've greased it with some butter, as you can see. And then I went ahead and sifted my flour into a bowl. So in most cake recipes, you tend to use equal part flour, sugar, and butter, although sometimes I do tend to decrease the amount of sugar that I use because sometimes I don't like it so sweet. But don't worry, I'm going to list all the ingredients and the measurements that I use in the description and also on screen. And so there I did just add the baking powder, and then I added a bit of salt as well because I'm using saltless butter or margarine. So in my stand mixer, I put in my butter and my sugar and let that go ahead and mix. This is the beauty of a stand mixer. No handwork, just relax and watch. So you want to mix that till it's really pale and really light and fluffy. And then I went ahead and cracked in my eggs. So I want to mention here that you should keep all your ingredients at room temperature. So your butter, your eggs, and everything else should be at room temperature, because if they're all different temperatures, that's how you find that your mix splits, if you've noticed sometimes when you make cakes. So that's just a little tip. And then I went ahead and added some vanilla essence as well. So my mixer is at high speed right now. However, I'm going to just decrease the speed as I go ahead and add my flour and my milk. And this is because if you over mix it at this stage, you'll end up with very dense cake, and you don't want that. You want a nice fluffy light cake. And there's my milk. So that's no ordinary milk. It is milk with vinegar so that it kind of turns like lumpy. It's a good buttermilk substitute. So you want to add a bit of flour, a bit of milk, a bit of flour, a bit of milk, and do it like that until you finish all your mix. Again, that is to make sure that it all mixes in evenly and you can fold it in nice and slowly. So that's my mix all done. And as you can see, that's not going to fill 2 pans, which I thought it should because the recipe told me it would. It's not. So you actually have to double that mix, and I had to make another mix. I wasn't happy. So anyway, I'm doing this to get all the air bubbles out and just to flatten my cake so it is nice and even when it comes out the oven. So now I'm moving on to the most daunting part of this whole thing, the Italian meringue buttercream. So it's not like a normal buttercream where you just do ice and sugar with some butter, but this is almost like making a meringue but making it into a buttercream. So first I'm separating the egg whites from the yolk. So in this recipe, I'm not going to be using the yolks. I'm just going to save those. You can use that for something else like custard or something. Here's a quick tip. So you don't want any type of fat or oils in your meringue mixture, otherwise it just won't fluff up properly. So it's really good idea to wipe your bowl or whatever you're using with a bit of vinegar just to clean that up. And then I went ahead and poured in my egg whites and added another couple of teaspoons of vinegar to that, and that also does the same thing. It kind of helps the mixture to be more stable and your egg whites will fluff up better. So it looks like my cake is ready to come out of the oven, and as you can see, my toothpick came out nice and clean with no wet batter on that, so that's a good sign. And I would just advise you, leave that cake in there for about 5 minutes to rest, but no more than 5 minutes before tipping your cake out to a rack. Otherwise your cake will stick to the pan like mine did, and that's not good. You'll see that in a minute. Okay, back to my buttercream. So in a pot I'm adding my sugar and my water, and I'm just heating them up to a very specific temperature. So here you do kind of need a thermometer to measure this, because this is really important. Okay, wait. This is the part where I need to tell you that this takes a lot of multitasking and keeping your mind very focused and in the game. And yes, I did lose my mind a few times during this. So I might not explain completely exactly what I'm doing, but I'm hoping that by you watching, it's quite clear what I'm doing. And if you have any questions, don't be afraid to just ask questions in the comment section. So yeah, let's continue. So my egg whites are currently mixing in there, and I'm just adding gradually just a small portion of the sugar I'm going to use. Of course, I'll give the measurements in the description. Okay, back to my sugary mix. I still have my thermometer in there, just waiting for the temperature to rise to where I want it to go. And at the same time, my egg whites are still fluffing up and they're doing very nicely. You want them to reach the stage where they form peaks, but soft peaks. Okay, and then here I realized that I measured my sugar wrong. I was supposed to triple my recipe. I didn't. And by the way, tripling the recipe was a mistake. Double it, but don't triple it, it's too much. So anyway, I added the rest of the sugar and water and continued allowing it to reach the temperature. And again, I'm back at my egg whites and they're still doing very well. I increased the speed and they're doing very well still. So they haven't reached the peaky stage yet, but I keep going. I keep going in faith. Alright, so my sugar is boiling now, but I'll tell you now, this part takes a really long time. I was really surprised by how long it took, but I think it was because the water had to evaporate a great deal before the sugar reached the temperature it needed to reach. And here is my egg white mixture, and it has reached the soft peak stage that you need to reach. As you can see, it like has a peak that it kind of holds, but it's also a little bit floppy. Okay, something bad happened here. The camera stopped rolling at the crucial stage where I added my sugar mixture into my meringue mixture. So as you saw, I reached the peak stage. At that stage, my sugar got to the correct temperature, and immediately I went ahead and I poured my sugar in slowly while the mixture continued to mix. So that is how I reached this stage. So I'm hoping that by watching this video, you'll learn from my mistakes and you will take away the tips that I give you for you to have a much better experience than I did. So tripling the recipe for this is not a good idea for making the size of cake that I'm making and for using this size of mixer, okay? So anyway, I added my chunks of butter. Again, I'll leave the recipe measurement in the description. So this is what happens when I continue to add small chunks of butter gradually, and let me tell you, this tastes so nice. And initially it did look really runny, but with more butter it does turn into a really lovely thick mixture like this. It's really nice. And the good thing about Italian buttercream is that it's just lighter and less sweet than the normal American buttercream with just icing sugar and butter. So as you can see here, I'm just adding my vanilla as well. So this is the, well, what I thought was going to be the hardest part done. Oh gosh, the Italian buttercream is done. So now I'm just going to make my decoration. So I decided to use some meringue cookie decoration. So they're not really cookies, they're just meringues made into kind of shapes and cookie-like shapes. Yeah. So just the normal way that meringues are made, I separated the egg yolks from the egg whites, and then I measured out my castor sugar as well. And then in a bowl, by the way, I did clean this bowl again with vinegar because that's really important. And then I mixed my egg whites till they were, you know, slightly foamy. And then I gradually went ahead and added my sugar, 1 spoon at a time. You don't want to pour all the sugar in because you might get like lumps of sugar in there, and that's not going to be good. So there's all my sugar added, and I have a beautiful luscious egg white mixture. As you can see, I have lovely peaks. See, lovely peaks, beautiful. And that's all done. And then I'm going to go ahead and try and make pretty meringue shapes. I'm sorry, my explanation is not going to be great, but if you just watch what I'm doing, I'm putting food coloring in my piping bag. So I'm just, you know, doing lines of food coloring to give me streaks of color on my meringue shapes. So you'll see, just keep watching. So after I did this, I went ahead and I did spoon in my meringue mixtures into the piping bags, and then I piped on some, well, they're meant to be meringue kisses. However, they do look a little bit like meringue poopies, but they're still cute. You can do any shapes that you want. These are to decorate my cake, so just be as creative as you like, but this is what I managed, you know. And then I went ahead and I did some kind of cookie shapes, some round shapes. Again, be as creative as you want. You can do little hearts, or you can do like I don't know, whatever. And then with the leftover, I just did little cutie little kisses. These look more like kisses. They're nice and cute. So here's another tip. I'm cutting my cakes up, and as you can see, look at my other cake. It got stuck to the pan because I left it for more than 5 minutes. So I'm cutting my cakes in half, and the best way to do this, I found anyway, is to use a ruler, measure halfway, and stick some toothpick into the halfway point. Okay, really easy. Makes it so nicely done, so smooth, no uneven cake cutting. This is a really handy trick that I picked up. You have to try this. Okay, so once you have your toothpick perfectly in, use some dental floss. Take a good nice long length of dental floss, right? And then you want to zigzag that through your toothpick. I hope that zigzag description makes sense, but just watch what I'm doing. Once you've zigzagged it through, then just take that and pull that nice and smoothly through, and you have a perfectly sliced cake. It's so perfect and so easy, and you don't have to buy the equipment because there's equipment for doing this, but I mean, this is cheaper. So yeah, look at that perfectly sliced cake. And then I went ahead and did the same thing on the other cake. And then, of course, time to decorate. So I have a cake stand and also my ice. Look at that. Oh, beautiful. And it tasted really good too. So my cake stand and also my cake board. And I just put a bit of icing on the base just to help the cake stick. I decided I also wanted to add some jam to my cake, so there is some just jarred jam, and then I put that into my piping bag. That's also a really good tip, to easily pour something into a piping bag. Look how easy that was. And there, that's ready. And then I did the same with my icing as well. Of course, you can color this icing, just mix in some food coloring, but I decided I just wanted my icing plain and white. So those are my cake fillings all ready, and I'm ready to assemble my cake. So here is my stand again, and I'm just putting my first layer of my cake. And if you notice, I put the jacked up layer first. But wait, here's another tip, right? Before you do that, to keep your cake board nice and tidy while you're decorating, do this. Put some greaseproof paper on the board, but don't do it exactly like I'm doing because I did make a mistake here. You should keep some space right in the middle of the board, and you'll see why that's important later. So yes, my slightly jacked up layer goes first. You can also put that layer in the middle, but I prefer for it to go first at the bottom because I think I can cover it up better there. But that's your choice, but definitely don't put it at the top. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Look what nearly happened. Let me tell you, this process gave me multiple heart attacks. So then I went ahead and put on a layer of my jam. By the way, I would advise against the jam. I mean, you are learning from my mistakes here, and I'll tell you, looking back, I regret the jam. I mean, the cake was still really great, but I just would have not put the jam. But that's your choice, again. And then I went ahead and put on my frosting. So you can definitely just spoon this on and spread this with a knife, but I thought it might be neater to do it this way. But again, it's your choice. Just judge based on what you can see me going through. So yeah, I tried to spread it a little with a knife, which didn't work very well. So on to the second layer. Alright, so now I want to cover the cake with some frosting. So this is a good way to cover kind of gaps between the layers. First of all, pipe in some icing into the gaps in the layers. By the way, if you are planning on making cakes like kind of regularly, maybe like every birthday you wanted to make a cake yourself, I would so recommend getting this type of cake table turny thing that I have, because it makes decorating a cake a lot easier. I mean, it's not an easy thing, however it makes it better. Definitely worth it, I would say. So after covering the cracks in the layers, I went ahead and just did upward frosting covers and then covered the top as well. And then with my little, this is I'm not sure what this knife is called, but it is used for decorating cakes. I got this a while ago when I decided I wanted to be a cake maker. Not really. When I decided I wanted to decorate cakes at home. So yeah, I use this to kind of spread the icing kind of thinly all over, and you can scrape away any excess icing as well. This is called the crumb layer. So you want to do a thin layer of icing initially, let that kind of set for a few minutes. You could put it in the fridge and let it harden, but I didn't have time for that. You can just do this, let it set for a few minutes, and that is the crumb layer. It's important to do this because you don't want cake crumbs on the outside of your actual icing, if that makes sense. So my crumb layer is done, and then I went ahead and did another thick layer of icing on the outside. So this does look like a huge amount of icing I'm adding. However, a lot of it was kind of scraped off as I spread the icing on. So again, I used the little knife to kind of smooth the icing onto the cake, and yes, it does look like an awful lot of icing, but I only put so much icing so I have a lot of room to kind of work with and to be able to smooth the icing onto the cake. And a lot of it I am actually scraping off the cake, so don't you worry about that. Of course, you can work how best you like. However, this is how I have found kind of works, and of course I am no expert, as you can see, but this method does work for an amateur like me. So I'm just slowly working around with the knife and trying to get as much excess icing as I can while smoothing the cake round as best as I can, and it is getting there. And here's another tool that I picked up during my baking frenzy that I had a few years back. It's just like a smoother, really. I use it for all sorts of things, but it's really good for smoothing out the cake like this. Really handy. So the cake is looking really nice and smooth, and I'm really happy with it at this point. And it just takes a little bit of time and patience, and you will get there. You will get there. And let me tell you, if I can achieve this, so can you. So here I'm just trying to smooth off the top with the little knife. So you see those rising edges there? I'm just trying to smooth them out. And this is something I saw the professional cake makers doing. So I decided to try it out myself, and actually is doing a good job. It's looking smoother. So there is the icing all done, and now on to decorating. And as you can see, I'm just adding kind of like a sprinkle base by just, you know, tossing on some sprinkle onto the base. And yeah, really nice. Love it. It's a boy, by the way. The baby is a boy, so this is supposed to be like a boyish cake. We'll see how it turns out. We'll see. This is all winging, by the way. And did you notice how well the bottom of the cake is covered? You see the jacked up part of the cake? Like nothing happened. No one could ever tell, could they? So that's why I think it is best to put any like jacked up uneven areas at the bottom or even the middle of the cake, never at the top, because that's harder to cover up. So with my base all decorated, I decided it would be a good idea to pour on some colorful balls onto the top. Yeah, retrospectively, What was I thinking, right? Okay, so this is where we're at now. And as if that wasn't bad enough, I decided I needed to do a drip. And so I did some double cream with some ice and sugar and some food coloring. A drip is meant to be done with chocolate and double cream. But I didn't have any chocolate, and so I decided to improvise, and then I over whipped the cream. What a mess. Disaster. At this point, I was freaking out. Okay, this is not working. But I persevered and continued to destroy the cake. As you can see, I mean, what is this? What is this? I think by this point, I was actually having a mini mental breakdown. So I continued to decorate the cake with my gorgeous, at least those turned out right, my gorgeous meringue decorations. They're so delicious as well. You can literally just snack on them. And as you can see at the back there, my sister attempts to fix the cake. So at this point, my sister, still with her sanity fully intact, unlike me, has convinced me that we can still save the cake by scraping off the double cream that I destroyed the cake with. So I really think this is a wonderful learning experience for you, just in case you manage to do something as stupid as I did. You can still save your cake if you botch up the decoration. You really can. So look at it. It's almost like a brand new cake again. And I happen to have plenty more icing to smooth that over. So that is what I proceed to do here. And it's looking much better already. And it wasn't difficult. Just scrape what you did wrong off and reapply the frosting. Simple. I'm telling you, thank God my sister was still there with her sanity intact to put things right, because this could have been really, really bad. I colored some of my frosting and decided to do some piping. I was trying to let my creative juices flow, but to be honest, I wasn't in the best mind frame to let them loose too much. We don't want another disaster. So I stopped right there. And then I proceeded to just arrange some of my other meringue pieces. They're so simple to make and they look absolutely amazing, and you can get creative with this. As I said before, it really looks like I really know what I'm doing here. And yes, I know the cake looks a little bit girly and it's meant to be a boy's birthday cake, but you know, I liked it, so therefore he liked it, okay? And then some finishing touches with some sprinkles right on top, and then we're done. So for the last bit, as I told you before, it's important that you put the paper at the bottom because look, it's a bit of a mess. And then remember I told you to make sure that the cake is in contact with the actual board and not the paper. This is why. Because if there's no contact with the board, the cake will move when you're trying to remove the paper. So just keep that in mind. The paper is important, however, don't compromise your cake. I hope that makes sense. So basically, put the paper, but make sure that there is space right in the middle for the cake to have contact with the board. And make sure that you do put some frosting right in the middle to make the cake stick to the board. Okay, I really hope all my explanation makes sense to you. But basically, the paper is really important because it makes sure that after all of that decoration mess, you have a nice neat board at the end. Just like this, look at that. So the cake is done. Look how gorgeous it is. I'm so proud of myself that I achieved this. and you can too. So the process I went through wasn't perfect by any means, but I'm hoping that by you watching this video, you'll learn from my mistakes and you'll take away some of the tips that I showed you, and you'll have a really good time making a beautiful cake. And let me know what you think about this in the description. Thank you so much for watching. Bye. Oh, and PS, I'm so sorry I didn't cut it open for you to see, but it was really delicious.